My biggest fear would be when the first comes and I don't get the rent.
I found that my tenant had dumped concrete down my toilet. Can you believe Fair Housing fined me $5,000 for that?
How do you onboard your tenants? What do you do?
I don't even know if I do it right.
If you're a landlord, don't just rent, rent perfect. The Rent Perfect podcast with property expert and private investigator, David Pickron.
Hello and welcome to the Rent Perfect podcast today. Grateful to have Heather Johnson, a usual guest with us. Heather, how are you doing?
I'm awesome. Good to be back.
Today's podcast is really going to be all about you as a new investor. And I'm really excited to kind of go through your little journey here. Because last year, if you looked at a podcast we had, we challenged you to become a landlord.
Right, and I am. I'm a landlord. Woo-hoo.
And
I'm
now
excited.
you're a landlord, and we did it. We made a goal. You've been helping so many people for so long. So we're going to kind of go through a little bit of beginning of your journey today for you new landlords out there. Because, you know, I remember my son first got his driver's license, okay? And I handed him the keys, and I said, hey, let's go to your favorite, sub place, get a sub sandwich, right? And we were in the driveway, and I give him the keys, and I'm a little scared, first of all, right? He's had his permit, and I've ridden in the passenger seat before, right? But now I'm kind of like, okay, here we go. And he kind of backs out of the driveway, and he looks at me, and he says, which way do I go? I'm like, which way do you go? We're going to the sub place, right? Well, yeah, but how do we get there? We had been to that place 100 times as a kid. In the back seat, on his phone, looking out the window. But when it came time for him being the one responsible for getting the car to the restaurant, he couldn't do it. He still needed help, right?
Yeah, he didn't have that confidence,
now,
I guess.
I say that, Heather, because you have been helping landlords for a very, very, very long time. And it seems like it's easy on our side to coach and to help people. Is it any different now that you're on your side?
Well, I definitely have a new perspective. I mean, I know the ins and outs of most of it, but there's certain parts of the process where I did need a little help from you. I had some questions, it's, with showing the property in particular, and we had some good strategies for that. It was a little, dipping my toe and then jumping in.
Right.
So a little bit of that, but I got there. I'm getting there.
So I think the difference is you have to deal with the consequences now. So as we give out and we talk to clients and we talk to people, we really don't have to deal with the consequences of their decisions. They do.
Yeah, well, it's easy to say, hey, treat this like a business,
right.
Do this, this, and this. And
right.
Then when you're in their shoes, you can see it from their perspective a little bit more. And you're like, oh, So
I'm excited because you've been a staple here for 10 plus years, just doing great things. But in a way, I've seen you grow in the last year because there's one thing to talk about the process and then there's another thing to do. And I think That's why, Rent Perfect is so successful, is because we have been built by me, a landlord who goes through this every day. I'm not a software company talking to people. I know what it feels like to want to waive something for someone you like, want to change your criteria, want to make exceptions. I know what that's all like. And it's not easy to do. It's easy to say, and sometimes, your heart gets the best of you. And so we coach in a way that says, hey, listen, let's keep you out of trouble, and let's sometimes it's nice to say, I want to do this, but someone told me not to, so let me just blame it on them and say, I'm not going to change the direction I'm going into. So tell us about your home deal as a refresher real quick about how you became a landlord.
Okay, so my husband and I decided to build a new home. So we, once we moved into our new home, now we're going to be renting our old home. So we have our new home and our rental. So we've just been getting that rental ready. We've listed that, and we've had some showings and some applications. So we already have, I'm handling it, but I already have more confidence after dealing with just a few people. And I've also learned that there's just different strategies depending on how the market is.
No, absolutely. So let's go back before you marketed. What did you do before you even talk to a person about moving into it? How did you prepare for that?
Well, we just want to make sure the house is in good shape, made our to-do list of what we need to do. We want to hand the property over in, great condition. That's just the strategy that we have. We expect them to take care of the property, so we're going to give that property to them in good condition. So getting that work done, and then more importantly, we've worked on our rental criteria. So what are we looking for in the person that we're applying or approving, excuse me, getting our application ready. What questions are we going to have on our application? The lease. So rental criteria, application, and lease are things we've been focusing on.
So I want to make sure that you did that all before you went out to find your new business partner. You took care of that. Some people will go and they'll want to put the property on the market so quickly they really don't even know who they're looking for,
right?
What kind of person that they want. You have a good application. So there are things to do even before you find the tenant or what we call your next business partner.
Yeah, that's how we did it. And some people are like, "Oh no, you should get it on the market now." We're like, "No, we're not quite ready. We need to get these things done. These are really important so that we have our rental criteria ready, so we can give that to the people that are going to be applying." And the Rent Perfect system sends that automatically to them, but we had to get that done.
So you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath?
We have a 3-bedroom, 2
How did you decide what criteria you wanted to do?
So just based on like the neighborhood, the rent amount is a little bit higher right now.
Okay.
And just the type of risk that we were willing to take. So we're newer landlords. We don't want a lot of risk right now. Everyone you rent to is going to be a risk, but we're just a little more strict with our criteria because we have a lot going on in our lives right now. It's our first one, so we want to get someone really well qualified.
Yeah, because if someone doesn't pay you your rent, you're 100% not paid. If you had like 5 units, you could say, okay, I'm paid 4 out of my 5, and
right. They're paying our mortgage.
But that you are 100% if these guys don't pay rent, footing the bill.
Right.
Okay,
we'd be paying that.
So your risk, you said, hey, we're not willing to take a lot of risks. So your criteria ended up being fairly high for your neighborhood?
Yeah, fairly high. I mean, it could be higher, but I think we're being fair. But
right. Okay, perfect. I love it. And you're right. You learn a lot about market, don't you?
Yeah.
You market totally different. Right now it is a landlord's market. We have total control. But that's not always the case, or in other parts of the country that might not be the case, and you do it a little bit different. Being that it's our market, landlord's market, how does that change the way you've marketed it on, say, Zillow?
So in Arizona here, we have 30 people a day interested in this property some days. Okay. So, and we're really busy. We're getting settled with our other house. We're working, doing other things. So we don't have a lot of time to deal with too many people at once. So we have a code phrase in our listing to help us sort through and kind of, get someone that we know read the listing and is actually interested to help us get, less interest per day, because we don't have time to go show the property to many people in one day. So
Zillow has become the new Craigslist, meaning that you're getting so many people apply with you that it's just overwhelming.
Right.
In certain markets, and in our market we are. And when we use the phrase word or the phrase sentence, the code phrase, is that what you called it?
I called it a code phrase, like a code word, like, hey, we're not going to respond to you unless you say this.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So we require 12 months bank statements right now for the current market, just with the moratorium going on and the current.
And that might be a hang-up for
industry.
some people.
Right. So then maybe they're not.
Right.
They can move on.
So
too.
as you make that your code phrase, if it's a hang-up for you, don't even apply then.
Right.
So you're going to get people that can even get through that part of your onboarding process.
Right. So that's kind of how we're filtering through some of those. We're still getting interest. But we've just used that code phrase to say, hey, we won't respond unless you send a message that says, hey, I know I have to provide my 12 months bank statements.
And in the last week, how many responses have you gotten versus how many that have given you the code word?
I mean, it's still quite a bit. At first, we were a little nervous. We're like, but we needed to be patient. That's what we're doing right now. We want to get right qualified person in there. So we're willing to wait a little bit longer. But I mean, I would say maybe one code word for every 10, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more.
Okay. And that tells you as a landlord that they're reading your entire
To me, it does.
ad, and that they like your property and they can see themselves into your property, just not any property.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, just with how our market here is in Arizona, some people are just going through and they're clicking apply, 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 and it kind of shows, you know.
Yeah.
And so
So you
that's what
pay Zillow $30 as an applicant. You can apply to as many places as you want in the next 30 days. So there are some people out there who have the mindset, I want any home. So they're going to hit apply, 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 apply until they find somebody that can put that roof over the head for them. Mm-hmm. We're not looking for that person, right?
Right. And we're just looking for less work right now because, like I said, we're busy. We're getting settled in our new house. We're working. We have a lot going on. So I don't want to take the time to respond to all these people. And, you know, a lot of them might not even respond to me because they've moved on to another property.
Right.
So it's kind of...
It's true. They've applied at 15, 20 different properties, and they're having 15, 20 different landlords getting back to them.
Right.
That's just causing you a waste of time.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a setting in Zillow that says accept online applications or not. Which way did you decide to go?
Oh, I don't use Zillow's online application.
Okay.
So when I created my listing, I did not check the box to accept applications. So, and I have in my listing, we do not use Zillow applications. Once you view the property, you can request an invite to our application and screening process. And of course, I use rentperfect.com.
Right.
But I make that known. So when people do request a Zillow application, it kind of makes me know they're really not reading the listing. So.
Well, whether you use Rent Perfect or don't use Rent Perfect, the fact is when you open somebody's application and when you click that, you no longer get, I want to view your property. You get, I want to apply at your property. And all of a sudden you can start seeing personal information that you do not want to see from someone that's not applying. But guess what? They are applying at that point. So if you look at enough personal information and they start thinking that they're applying, then you need to give an adverse action letter when you decide to say no.
Right. So that's more work.
Right? Yeah, it's more work. And so I would rather deal with just one person applying at a time. I can have a lot of interest. I can show the property a ton of times, right? I can send out multiple invites to apply, but once someone applies, HUD wants us to allow them to go through the whole thing before we start approving 5 and 6 people and then denying and getting all these applications in front of us. We don't want to do it that way anymore. There's too much liability.
Yeah,
out
and it's
there.
unfair. So, we just tell people, hey, we have a lot of interest, people are applying, but we'll process one application at a time. So we're being patient. We've only had it on the market, not even a week. So
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Before you posted it at Zillow, you went and talked to your neighbors, and you let them know that you were moving.
I did.
Why?
One, they were out front, just being honest. It was convenient. No, but second, we just wanted to introduce ourselves. They were actually moving in, and I was a little disappointed when my neighbor that I was kind of buddies with, she let me know she was selling the home, and I was like, oh no, because
So you're both moving at the same time.
Yeah, so I was like, I lost my buddy. So I was happy to see that they were moving in. It was good timing. So we introduced ourselves, and I said, hey, actually, we don't live here right now. We're going to be renting this home.
Yeah, and then they're like,
And
oh,
they're like,
shoot.
their face. And
I'm
I'm
going
like,
to have
okay.
renters for neighbors,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm like, don't worry. We're going to, we have a good application and screening process. And immediately they were just, hey, yeah, we'll help you keep an eye on the property. Just make sure, they're taking care of it. Either just being nice.
Right.
And then on top of that, we went inside and we're kind of working our way down some of our to-do list. And they came and knocked on the door and they had someone that wanted to apply. So
Right.
a little referral right there. So that was nice too.
Okay. And so the neighbor wanted a friend or a family member, someone to move in next door. And
Right.
Gave
It was
you that?
someone they knew, and we let them know, oh, yeah, they can definitely apply. No promises.
Right. And they applied and had some challenges,
They did.
right? And you caught them in a few situations, and they weren't approved, correct?
Yeah, and it was unfortunate. I don't want to decline anyone, but it's really in their best interest and mine. So when someone applies, if they're not qualified and they move in there, that's going to be miserable for them too. No
Right.
one likes, scrambling to try and find the rent. I don't want to have to nag you for the rent. So it was unfortunate, but it was also fortunate that the screening process helped us determine that they weren't a good fit at this time.
Okay, on that particular applicant, did you call the prior landlord?
I did call the prior landlord.
And what did the prior landlord tell you?
The prior landlord first gave this recommendation letter. Oh, they're great, never been late, no problems. And so we give him a call, said the same thing. But in my own due diligence, I did discover that there were a few missing rent payments. So he wasn't exactly honest.
So you had a landlord that wasn't honest with you. How did you catch the landlord that wasn't honest with you? What did you require?
I required the bank statements.
Okay. So the 12 months worth of bank statements, which a lot of landlords say, whoa, that's asking too much. What happened when you started circling rent on the bank statements?
One, I noticed they were paying kind of late in the month sometimes. I hadn't seen their lease, so I didn't know their agreement with the landlord. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed was there was some months that hadn't been paid at all. So, I won't get too much into details. I think there was some other venues they had paid through, but they weren't able to prove everything, in time that I needed it.
Right.
So it's just everything wasn't adding up. So I was grateful that I had that paperwork before me rather than just going off someone's word.
Right. And I know you're on a podcast here, and we don't want, people to be offended if they listen to this that dealt with you at all. We're just teaching landlords that, listen, these bank statements nowadays with this eviction moratorium, with landlords who are just wanting to get rid of people in their houses, just get them out, whether they want to sell it, whether they haven't paid rent, whatever the reason. Unfortunately, we cannot trust current landlords right now. And I wish, they're my people. I wish I could say, yeah, we've all banded together and we're all being honest. But the reality is there are a lot of landlords that are hurt so bad, they're willing just to say, just get this tenant out of my property so I can move forward. So I kind of understand where they're coming from. But I'm telling you right now, Heather, the best thing you did was require those bank statements. That tells you money going out of the bank, and it shows you income coming into the bank.
Yep. So I could see all the deposits. That was great.
And they didn't want to give you bank statements at first. They thought, it's too cumbersome right?
Well, they gave me some screenshots, but once I looked at those screenshots, those were also missing the payments. So these were good people. I don't think they truly understood, what was going on. Right. Maybe they were, but I'm just trying not to,
No, but the fact is you noticed that there were missing payments.
There were missing payments.
The landlord was willing to write a letter just to say, get out of here.
Yeah.
And you realize that if another hardship comes along in that family's life, you look at how they handled the last hardship and maybe how they're going to handle the next hardship. And you have to decide, do I want to be in the middle of that or not?
Right.
It's a little callous, but we're talking about your first rental. We're talking about a $400,000 asset.
Right.
Don't you have the right to make sure you do everything to make sure you get your mortgage? And I think you do.
Yeah. And, unfortunately at this time, we're just not in a position where we could help them. We would then be the ones not paying our mortgage at that point. I mean, we have a little cushion because, you got to be responsible that way. But in this particular situation, too, I would add the rent was a lot more than their previous rent. That played a big part of it. I know a lot of people fell into some hard times with COVID, lost jobs.
It was almost double.
It was almost double. That was a big part of it.
So you're looking at rental history on half of the rent.
That they struggled
and you're
with
thinking, I'm going into next or this year with double the rent. And if you bank statements couldn't show me you've paid that, what makes me think you could pay double? I mean, those are just things you're thinking about.
Right.
Awesome.
So they were kind of in my conditional range, which just means, if you're not familiar with rental criteria, the conditional range is just when maybe the credit gets a little bit lower. Still,
not
average.
A complete approval, not a complete denial,
right.
just
So
kind of a...
So those things play an important role. I mean, how much is the rent? How much is the income? Right. And missed rental payments. And for our particular strategy and situation right now, it was just a little bit too much risk to take on, and we weren't willing to take that.
Well, Heather, I appreciate you being here today. It's one thing to have a bunch of different podcasts, and we do a lot of trainings and a lot of Zooms, and we talk about all these different things that we suggest. But to have one podcast where say, okay, Heather's new, and Heather's gone through the system that we teach, and it actually helped her, where she could make good decisions on finding renters or saying no to certain renters. Now, you're showing your property tomorrow. We're in the middle of this still. We're going to do a 2-part series on this, right?
All right,
It's just
yeah.
too much to talk about the whole process. So I just wanted to take it up till today, and we'll continue this podcast in a couple weeks. But you're meeting with someone tomorrow. Did they give you the code word?
They gave the code word.
Okay. And so far, it's looking pretty good,
Yeah,
right?
so far it's looking pretty good. I mean, they're going to come see the property. We'll see if they want it.
Right.
So we're just being patient right now.
So what will you do tomorrow in the showing? How will you show it?
Well, we usually we meet them at the property, kind of introductions. Then we just let them go look at the property, like
Right.
give them some.
There's no reason to be over their shoulder.
I don't need
on,
to give them a tour.
This is a closet.
Yeah, this.
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
I love the house, but it's
Right.
not that special. There's no trapdoors or secret.
Right.
Just go check it out.
Right.
And then they'll just come back down. We just ask them, oh, hey, I've already kind of had this conversation with this person a little bit. Oh, why are you moving? Where are you moving
Right.
from? Just kind of small talk, see if they have any questions.
Will you give them the criteria?
So some of the criteria, like the bigger pieces, are in the listing, I guess, like through
Right.
income
Right.
requirements, things like that. And then if they're interested, I'll send them an invite to our online application and screening process.
And it has
And that will have the criteria.
criteria there. Awesome.
So that's how we've been handling it.
Okay. Well, let me know how that goes. That should be great. And this time next month, you'll have a big fat monthly check in your hand to pay that mortgage and take a little bit off the top and,
Yeah, we're
do
not
what you want to do with
stressing
it.
right now. I mean, it would be great to rent it by the 1st, but if we need to wait a little bit longer to get, the right person in there or the, qualified person in there, we're more
Right.
than willing to do that.
Absolutely.
So
Don't be afraid of an empty rental because all you're going to do is put the wrong person in there, and then in a month or two, you're going to be in the exact same position. If you need to wait a month or two to find the right person, I know in your head it says I'm losing money, but trust me, in the long run, it will work out in your favor. We appreciate you being here today, Heather. We appreciate you. Go ahead and
Thanks for having
subscribe
me.
below and follow our podcast as we're bringing you, just different tidbits. Today was kind of fun, kind of just talking about a deal and how you do a deal.
Yeah.
Heather, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And have a great day. And until next time, continue to rent perfect.